My true story from New York. My son slapped me in front of my relatives on Thanksgiving Day. My daughter-in-law sneered and clapped her hands. I just smiled and opened a door. $12 million, 0 cents will show them the price of ungratefulness. He, my son, slapped me. Hard. The sound cracked through the room, louder than the clinking wine glasses or the football game playing in the background. My head snapped sideways, and I felt the sting before the pain, the heat blooming across my cheek. I stumbled back into the chair behind me, one hand instinctively reaching out, grabbing nothing. My lips split. I tasted blood. Rachel clapped. "Bravo," she said, smirking like she had just watched a soap opera climax. Finally said what we're all thinking. I sat there, blinking, heart thudding in my chest, while 23 faces turned away. Some looked down at their plates. Some shifted in their seats. No one moved. Not one person reached out to help me. Not one asked if I was all right. Michael, my son, my only son, stood over me, jaw tight, hand still half raised. The same hand I used to hold when he was learning to walk. The same hand I used to kiss goodnight when monsters lived under his bed. "You want to know why I hate Thanksgiving, Mom?" he said, stepping around the table. "Because every year I have to pretend I'm grateful for a woman who's done nothing but drag us down. You just sit there, breathing our air, eating our food, offering nothing." He grabbed the carving knife, slammed it down on the table. Plates clattered. "You're not a mother. You're a debt, a stain. If you dropped dead tomorrow, it would be a relief." And Rachel, God bless her rotten heart, laughed. The house smelled of roasted turkey, cinnamon, sweet potatoes with marshmallows. The dining table gleamed, every fork in place, the centerpiece a wreath of dried flowers I had arranged myself at 6 that morning. I had spent 2 days cooking. Nobody asked if I needed help. Nobody said thank you. My granddaughter, Savannah, 12 years old, looked up from her seat and giggled. "Why is Grandma cutting the turkey? She didn't even do anything this year. She just watches TV." That was before the slap, before the silence, before the blood. But it was always leading here. Thanksgiving used to be about family, about love, about remembering the ones who came before us. Not anymore. Now it was about power, control, erasure. I looked down at my hands, still shaking, still red from the oven heat, and folded them in my lap. I did not cry. I did not speak. I sat in the same chair where my husband once carved the turkey, with pride and grace, and I waited. Because this was not the end of my story, it was the beginning. I was once the head nurse at St. John's for 38 years. I knew how to find a vein in the dark. I delivered babies in parking lots, stitched open wounds in emergency rooms so full the gurneys lined the halls. Every scar I bandaged, every life I helped extend, it was all for my son, so he would never know what it meant to struggle, so he would never have to sacrifice the way I did. Michael was born after 5 years of trying. He was my answered prayer. When he got into Columbia, I cried into the uniform I had worn for over 3 decades. I sold my wedding ring to help cover the first year's tuition. I picked up an extra overnight shift for every textbook he needed. When he graduated, I was the one who paid the security deposit for his first apartment in the city. I was the one who co-signed on the loan when he opened his first marketing agency. When he married Rachel, I gave him the last of my savings for their honeymoon and told him to start his life free of debt. Then Joseph, my husband of 42 years, passed away in his sleep. And everything quieted. Michael called a week after the funeral. His voice was kind, measured. He said, "Mom, you should come live with us. You shouldn't be alone. It's time someone takes care of you." I said yes. I was tired, grieving. I thought it was love, but it wasn't love. It was control. The first month, Rachel took my phone to simplify the family plan. Calls stopped coming in. My friend Camille from church said she tried to visit, but Rachel told her I was resting and not up for company. The second month, Michael brought me a stack of paperwork. "Just bank stuff, Mom," he said. "We want to make sure everything's streamlined. Just sign here and here." I didn't read it. I trusted my son. A week later, I found out I had signed away my share of the house Joseph and I once partially owned. My name was gone from the deed. The only place I now existed in that house was in a few faded photos on the stairwell, and even those would soon disappear. My bedroom door had no lock. My medication was kept in a box Rachel controlled. Once, I asked to get my own refill and she said, "Too risky. You get confused too easily. Just let me handle it." I was not confused. I was being erased. At dinner, I was not allowed to eat until everyone else had. I waited by the sink, plate in hand, hoping there'd be enough roasted chicken or mashed potatoes left after they were done. Some nights there wasn't. They said I needed structure, so I was given a schedule. Clean the laundry room on Tuesdays. Fold the towels on Thursdays. Rachel once looked me up and down and said, "At least this way, you're earning your keep." One Sunday I mentioned I missed my choir. Rachel laughed. "You wouldn't even be able to hit the notes anymore." Michael said nothing. He just kept reading the paper. And still I stayed. Because I told myself this was what mothers did. They endured, they forgave, they waited for their children to remember who they were. But every day I realized I was not a mother in that house. I was a servant. And not even a wanted one. One morning, I was pouring oatmeal into a chipped ceramic bowl, my bowl, the only one Rachel allowed me to use, when I heard her voice behind me, sharp and low like the edge of a knife. "Living with you is like living with a curse," she said. "Even dogs have the decency to show loyalty." I turned slowly, holding the spoon still in my hand. Her lips curled into something that might have once passed for a smile, but now only spat contempt. "You're like a storm that never ends," she continued. "You bring cold with you, and guilt, and that smell, like dust and old medicine." I did not respond. I had learned that silence was safer than truth in this house. Later that day, I dropped one of my pills. My hands, too stiff and slow, missed the rhythm. It rolled under the kitchen island. I knelt carefully, one hand on the linoleum to keep from slipping. When I stood back up, Rachel was standing at the counter with the bottle in her hand. "Really?" she said, raising her eyebrows. "You can't even take your meds without turning it into a scene?" "I'm sorry," I murmured. She walked over to me, held the bottle at eye level, then raised her arm and threw it at my chest, hard. "Take it," she snapped, "and hurry. Old people get dramatic when they think they're dying." The bottle hit my sternum and bounced to the floor. I heard the pills inside rattle like dry seeds. I bent down, picked it up, unscrewed the cap with shaking fingers and took the pill. It tasted like shame. That night I sat on the edge of my bed and stared at my hands. These same hands had held my son's body when he was barely the length of my forearm. These hands had clapped for him at his high school graduation, wiped his nose during flu season, held his shaking shoulders after his first heartbreak. And these same hands, now wrinkled and weak, were no longer welcome to touch anything in his house. I looked toward the shelf beside my bed. There sat an old cassette recorder I had kept from my nursing days, used once to dictate notes or patient updates. I hadn't touched it in years. But that night I took it out, dusted it off, and inserted a new tape. I pressed record, and I whispered, "March 12th. Rachel told me I am worse than a dog. She said I am a curse." Every night after that I recorded something new. March 16th. Michael said I ruined the smell of the house. April 1st. Rachel called me a slave in slippers. April 23rd. They told their friends I was senile, even though I passed every test. I did not know what I would do with those tapes, but they made me feel like I still existed, like my version of the truth still mattered. Then came the afternoon of the photo. It was raining outside. The sky looked bruised. Rachel stormed into my room holding her phone, angry because a relative had tagged me in an old Facebook photo from Michael's wedding. I had commented with a simple heart emoji. Apparently that was embarrassing. "Are you that desperate to be remembered?" she hissed. I didn't answer. She scanned the room, her eyes full of Hunt. And then she saw it. My wedding photo, a black and white portrait framed in silver from 1972. My husband's tie was crooked. I wore a veil borrowed from a neighbor. We looked happy, real happy. She reached for it. "No," I said, for the first time in a long time, too quickly, too loudly. She turned to me. "What's this? Your little shrine?" She lifted the frame and looked at it with disgust. "You think this means anything to anyone but you?" And before I could stop her, she slammed it onto the floor. The glass cracked like gunfire. I gasped. She left the room without a word. I knelt down. My knees screamed. My hands trembled. but I gathered every shard. Behind the picture, where only I knew to look, was a folded envelope. Yellowed at the edges, inside, a copy of my husband's last will and testament. He had made a backup before he died, tucked it in a place sacred to both of us, a place he knew they would never look, because they never cared. I held the torn photo in one hand and the envelope in the other, and finally I cried. Not because the frame was broken, but because I realized just how much they wanted to erase me, not just from the table, not just from their guest lists or family stories, but from my own life. They wanted me gone, forgotten, filed under inconvenient. But I was not gone, and I would not be forgotten. That night, I recorded a new entry on the cassette. May 10th, she broke the frame, but not the memory, not the truth. Then I locked the door, and I began to plan. They say old people get confused easily. They say we forget things, lose track of time, sign papers without reading. They think because our hands shake and our memories blur around the edges, we must not know how the world works anymore. Let me tell you something. I was quiet. I was tired. But I was never stupid. After the day Rachel shattered the wedding frame, I waited until the house was empty. I collected the fragments of glass, the bent silver edges, the pieces of my past, and placed them gently into a box. Then I took the will, my husband's true will, the one he never told Michael about, and I walked, slowly but surely, 2 blocks to the library. There, using the computer with the magnified screen, I searched for a name I had not typed in over a decade. Daniel H. Greenberg. He had once been a gangly law student, always late, always grateful for my husband's mentorship. I remembered he had called us his second parents. When my husband passed, Daniel sent flowers. I still had the card. I found his practice, still in Manhattan, still in business. I called the number. He answered in the second ring. "Daniel Greenberg," he said. "Daniel," I said softly. "This is Mrs. Lillian Horowitz. My husband was—" "Joseph," he finished. "Mrs. Horowitz, it's been too long. Are you okay?" No one had asked me that in years. I almost cried. 2 days later, I sat across from Daniel in his office, hands folded neatly on my lap. I handed him the envelope with the will. He read in silence for 15 minutes. When he looked up, his face was pale. "Do you know what this means?" he asked. "I know Joseph left something for me. I just did not know what." He took out a map, a list of property IDs, 3 parcels of land, all in Brooklyn, purchased decades ago when the neighborhood was still Polish bakeries and brick repair shops. Now it was yoga studios and wine bars. Tech executives were paying millions for condos that used to be factories. "Do you want to know the value?" he asked gently. I nodded. 12 million. Possibly more if we play it right. I felt my throat close. I thought of every time I went without dinner so my son could eat, every time I skipped medication because I was told it was too expensive, every insult, every slap of silence at that dinner table, all while I sat on $12 million and no one, not even me, knew it. I took a breath and said, "Selim," quietly. We moved slowly, deliberately. Daniel formed a trust, under a generic name, Heritage Estate Holdings. 1 property was sold through a private buyer. The second, through a company Daniel had worked with before. The third, we held on to for a few more weeks until an investor doubled his offer. By the end of 3 months, the trust held $12,400,000, 0 cents. Daniel asked, "What would you like to do with it?" I knew my answer already. I want it to go to mothers like me, women forgotten by their families. I want them to know they are not alone. He smiled. We formed a nonprofit, the Forgotten Mother Fund. It would provide emergency housing, small grants, travel stipends for women trying to visit estranged children in hospice, legal aid for seniors being financially exploited, and then I made a second request. I need a space, small, discreet, but close. Daniel raised an eyebrow. "I want to set up an office in the basement," I said, "of my son's house." His mouth opened in shock. "Lillian, do they know?" "No, and they will not. I want it there. I want to see their faces the day I open that door." He helped me draft a rental agreement. The trust technically owned the lease, under another name. I paid the monthly fee from the estate, The basement, which they never used except to store broken furniture and holiday decorations, was cleaned out, repainted, fitted with a desk, a filing cabinet, a printer, and 2 locked drawers. I paid the rent. Using the trust, technically, they were renting space to a stranger without knowing it. And that stranger was me. Inside one drawer was the final version of my new will. I removed Michael and Rachel entirely. I included a note that read, "I gave you everything I had once, my money, my back, my silence. Now, I give you the only thing you ever gave me, nothing." I signed it on a cold Tuesday afternoon. And then, I waited. I waited through another birthday where no one said happy birthday, through a night where I had a fever and they said they were too tired to drive me to urgent care, through summer when Rachel screamed at me because I left one dish unwashed, through fall when Michael told a neighbor I had dementia because I forgot to close the back gate. I said nothing. Every night, I walked past the basement door and smiled, because they thought they had stripped me of power. They thought they had locked me into silence, but they never learned one simple truth. A quiet woman is not a weak one. She is just waiting for her moment. I woke up at 5 that morning. It was still dark. The house was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator and the ache in my knees. I sat on the edge of my bed for a moment, gathering the strength to stand. It took longer than it used to. 14 dishes. I had planned each one the night before: turkey with rosemary butter, garlic mashed potatoes, cranberry sauce with orange zest, Rachel's kale salad with pecans, Michael's favorite cornbread stuffing, the pumpkin pie I had made every year since 1974, everything written in pencil on a yellow legal pad. No one offered to help. Rachel floated through the kitchen once around 10 a.m., coffee in hand, glanced at the trays of raw vegetables and the rising bread dough, and said, "You're really going all out this year, just don't burn the turkey. Last year it was dry as hell." Then she disappeared into the bathroom for 2 hours to curl her hair. By noon, the house filled with noise, laughter from the living room, the smell of perfume, glasses clinking, people arriving with wine bottles dressed in cashmere and cologne, cousins I had not seen since Michael's wedding, friends of Rachel's I had never met, and not one came into the kitchen to say hello. The table had been extended with 2 folding ends, 20 chairs, cloth napkins, candle centerpieces that Rachel had ordered online and told everyone she had arranged herself. I brought out the platters one by one, my hips screaming each time I bent down. As I walked past the dining room, I overheard Rachel, loud enough for the guests and me to hear. "My mother-in-law can be a little much. She says strange things sometimes. I just want to apologize ahead of time if she interrupts or says something off. She's been having a hard time adjusting. You know how it is at that age." She smiled sweetly, as if concerned. I kept walking. I set the sweet potatoes down beside the glazed carrots. I took my seat at the far end of the table, next to the kitchen door. Dinner began. They toasted to success, to family, to new chapters. Rachel stood to show off her new necklace. Michael thanked everyone for coming. No one mentioned me. Halfway through the meal, as I passed a dish of roasted Brussels sprouts to the woman on my left, I heard Michael clear his throat. He stood. "Hey," he said, tapping his glass with a fork. "Quick thing, before dessert." The room quieted. "I just want to say thank you to everyone for being here. It means a lot. Rachel and I have been building something really special these past few years, this home, this life, and we're proud of what we're becoming. It has not always been easy, especially with certain distractions." He looked at me. I looked back. He continued, "But I think we're turning a corner. And I think, Mom, maybe it's time you understood that too." There was a pause. Then, in front of 20 people, cousins, neighbors, old friends, he said, "Mom, at some point you have to stop acting like this house is yours, like we owe you something. We don't. You've lived here rent-free. We've fed you, paid your bills, taken care of everything, and still you act like the victim." I could feel the air drain from the room. A few guests looked away. One woman reached for her water glass, trembling slightly. Rachel placed a hand over her heart and looked down solemnly, like she was mourning something. Michael wasn't finished. "We're trying to build a future here, a clean image. Clients come over, friends. You showing up during dinners, standing behind people with that look on your face, it's..." Well, it's unsettling. He paused again, letting the words hang in the air. So if you can't be part of the solution, Mom, then at least have the decency not to be part of the presentation. Silence. I looked down the long table, faces dipped toward plates. Nobody made eye contact. I scanned the room for someone, anyone who might speak up. An old neighbor, a second cousin. But they all looked away, cheeks pink, forks frozen in midair. I nodded. I picked up the carving knife beside the turkey, held it for a moment in my hand, then placed it gently back onto the tray. I stood. My chair scraped quietly against the hardwood floor. I smoothed my skirt, straightened my spine, ran one hand through my graying hair. Then I turned and walked out of the dining room. Step by step, I passed the kitchen, the pantry, the hallway with the family photos, none of which included me anymore. At the end of the hall, I opened the door to the basement. Cool air greeted me like an old friend. I descended the stairs, one slow step at a time. Behind me, the sound of silverware resumed. A single laugh. Someone poured more wine. They thought I was retreating. They thought they had won. But the truth was, I was not leaving the table in shame. I was walking straight toward justice. I returned upstairs only once, to stand at the edge of the dining room, and in the calmest voice I could muster say, "I need everyone to follow me downstairs. Please, just a moment." There was confusion. A few guests chuckled awkwardly. Someone asked, "Is everything okay?" Michael's mouth tightened. Rachel looked annoyed. But no one refused. One by one, they filed down the narrow staircase, wine glasses still in hand, heels clicking on the wood steps. A few grumbled, some whispered, but they followed. At the bottom of the stairs, the lights were already on. The basement was not the dusty, forgotten space they remembered. It had been transformed. White painted walls, a long table, a projector screen, 2 chairs positioned at the front, beside a podium, and waiting patiently in one of those chairs was Daniel Greenberg, dressed in a gray suit, calm, professional. Next to him stood a young man holding a camera. Rachel gasped. "What is this?" Michael blinked. "What the hell is going on?" I stepped forward and said, without raising my voice, "This is my home, Michael, and now it is also the place where the truth lives." The room fell quiet. Daniel stood. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming. My name is Daniel Greenberg. I represent Mrs. Lillian Horowitz, and I've been her legal counsel for the past several months." He gestured to the young man with the camera. "For transparency purposes, we are recording this interaction, as is standard procedure when disclosing sensitive estate matters." Rachel stepped forward, visibly shaken. "Did state matters? What is he talking about?" "I'm getting there," I said, and reached toward the speaker on the table. I clicked play. At first nothing, then static. Then Rachel's voice, sharp and cold. "Living with you is like living with a curse. Even dogs have the decency to show loyalty." Click. Michael's voice, bitter. "You think I owe you something? You're just a debt I've been paying since Dad died." Click. Rachel again. "Drink your pills and shut up. I'm not your maid." Click. A chorus of gasps. A woman covered her mouth. Someone's husband muttered, "Jesus Christ." I paused the speaker and said, "I recorded every insult, every threat, every time they called me useless or worse." I turned to Daniel. "Please continue." He adjusted his glasses and pulled out a folder. "As of 3 months ago, Mrs. Horowitz has liquidated 3 properties in Brooklyn previously held under her late husband's name. The total value of those sales amounted to $12,400,000, 0 cents. Gasps rippled through the room. He continued, "Those funds have since been transferred into a registered nonprofit trust titled the Forgotten Mother Fund, which will support elderly women facing neglect or abandonment by their families." Michael stepped forward, red-faced. "What are you talking about?" "Mom, those properties, what do you mean liquidated? You never—" "I did," I said. "You didn't ask, because you didn't care." Daniel laid another document on the table. Additionally, Mrs. Horowitz signed a new last will and testament, dated and notarized in 3 different states, with digital and physical backups stored securely. In this document, all previous heirs have been removed. He looked directly at Michael. "Including immediate family." Rachel swayed slightly and grabbed the back of a chair. Michael stared at me like he had never seen me before. I stepped forward. My voice did not shake. I am not taking revenge. I am restoring the truth. I looked at them, my son, my daughter-in-law, even the granddaughter who once mocked me over turkey. You are not my heirs, you are not my caretakers, you are not even my family. You are strangers who happened to live in my house. There was silence, thick, final. Then Michael screamed, "Mom, what the hell is wrong with you? You're giving all that money to strangers. Strangers, what about your own blood?" I met his eyes. "I gave my blood to you. When you were born, when you were sick, when you failed and I pulled you back up, I gave my life, and what you gave me back was cruelty." He moved toward me. "You're senile. This is insane. You can't even think straight anymore." Daniel raised a hand. "Everything has been verified through medical evaluations. Her mind is intact. Her memory is exceptional. The court recognizes her decisions as fully competent." Rachel finally spoke, her voice shrill. "We took care of you. We gave you a home." "No," I said. "You gave me a room and called it a prison. You gave me leftovers and called it love." Michael pointed at Daniel. "We're going to contest this. Do you hear me? This is elder abuse." Daniel calmly replied, "Feel free. The state courts have already reviewed the filings. You'll be contesting against signed recordings, video documentation, and multiple witnesses. Good luck." I took one last breath and turned to the group. "You may go back upstairs now." No one moved. Finally, someone whispered, "You were right to do this." Another nodded slowly. Then, one by one, they climbed the stairs. I did not follow. I remained in the basement, where the truth finally had a voice. After the room emptied and the echo of footsteps faded upstairs, I remained in the basement, breathing in silence. The projector was off. The chair beside me was empty. Only the soft hum of the furnace remained, the one that never quite worked, unless I kicked it twice at the bottom. I heard him before I saw him, the uneven cadence of feet on stairs, a quick breath, then another. Michael appeared in the doorway, no longer puffed up, no longer smirking. His eyes were red, his suit wrinkled from how he had collapsed into a dining chair upstairs. His mouth trembled as he took one step into the room. "Mom," he said. I looked at him, expressionless. He walked toward me, then stopped halfway, unsure. His voice cracked. "Please? Please talk to me." I waited. Then he dropped to his knees, right there on the cold cement floor, where only moments ago he had listened to his own voice calling me a burden. He cried, "I was wrong. I swear to you I was wrong. I don't know what got into me. I've been stressed, work, Rachel, the kids. I don't know who I've become." I watched him. "I know I don't deserve anything, but if you give it to me, I promise, I'll take care of you for the rest of your life. I'll do better. You'll never be alone again." It was a performance, the kind where the actor is desperate for a standing ovation, but I knew that play. I had seen the rehearsal, because years ago I watched another man on another bed take his last breath, and Michael did not come. It was a Tuesday morning. My husband had been in hospice care for 2 weeks. I had called Michael the night before. "Dad's breathing is shallow," I had said. "The nurse said it could be any time now." He replied, "I've got a conference, Mom. I'm the keynote. It's a big opportunity." "You might not get another chance," I whispered. There was silence on the other end. Then he said, "You'll be with him. That's what matters," and he hung up. My husband died at 4:17 a.m. I held his hand. I wiped his lips. I whispered, "Thank you." Michael sent flowers 2 days later, but never came to the funeral. And now he knelt before me, reaching for mercy like it was a check he could cash. I stood slowly. I walked to the small cabinet in the corner, opened the top drawer. Inside was a photo, our family portrait from 20 years ago. I had worn a blue dress. Michael's hand rested on his father's shoulder. Rachel was newly pregnant, smiling in pearls. I took it out, held it gently between my fingers, and then, without a word, I tore it straight down the middle. Michael gasped. I walked over and placed one half in his lap, the side where he stood, arm around Rachel, the boys clinging to his legs. The other half, me and Joseph, I kept. He reached up to grab my arm. I stepped back. "No," I said. "You had every chance." He started to plead, "Mom, please, just give me a chance to make it right." I shook my head. "It's not about the money, Michael. It never was." His voice was high now, desperate. "Then why? Why would you give everything to strangers? I looked at him. Really looked. For the first time in years I saw the boy he once was. The boy who used to climb trees and bring me dandelions in spring. The boy who called me Mama in his sleep. And I also saw the man. The man who called me a mistake. The man who let his wife call me a slave. The man who let me bleed and did not flinch. You are not a stranger because you are no longer in my will, I said quietly. You are a stranger because I no longer recognize the soul inside you. He clutched the photo piece, fingers trembling. Tears fell freely now, but I had no more left to match them. Blood, I said, is a chance, not a guarantee. I turned away. At the stairs, I paused. My hand rested on the railing. And I left him there, alone, with one half of a picture and none of the truth. I left the house 2 weeks after Thanksgiving, not with a suitcase, but with a single bag, passport, scarf, my husband's watch. I did not leave a note. I did not owe one. My first stop was Florence. The sky looked like it had been painted by hand. I wandered through alleyways lined with orange stone, tasted olive oil so fresh it stung my tongue. I stood in front of the David statue and thought, he looks so sure of himself, just like Joseph used to. Then Santorini. The water was too blue to be real. I stayed in a tiny white house with blue shutters, where the wind carried the smell of lemons. I read books on the roof, barefoot, wrapped in an old shawl. At night, I drank wine and listened to my own breath. In Kyoto, I walked beneath falling cherry blossoms. I bought a silk ribbon I did not need. I sat in a bamboo grove and whispered a prayer to no one. And for the first time in decades, my shoulders did not ache from tension. I slept through the night. In between these places, I met a woman at an airport in Istanbul. Her name was Maribel. She was 74 and had been stranded when her daughter refused to pay for her return flight. She said I embarrassed her, Maribel told me, because I walk with a cane. She was trying to sleep on a bench. Her hands were swollen. Her coat was thin. I called the airline and bought her a flight home. When she asked me why, I told her, because you remind me of someone I used to know. Back in New York, Daniel emailed me updates from the foundation. The Forgotten Mother Fund had helped 17 women in its first month, 1 with legal aid, 3 with transportation, others with temporary housing or support. I mailed a postcard to the office every city I visited. The one from Athens read, Joseph, you once told me, go where we never did. Let the world show you how to be free. I am doing it now, for both of us. One evening, I sat by the sea in Marseille. The sun had just slipped beneath the horizon, leaving behind a sky of lavender and gold. I closed my eyes, and for a moment, I was back in the dining room, back at the head of the table, back in that moment. The slap, the shame, the sound of applause that was meant to break me, but it did not. I opened my eyes again. The waves kissed the shore softly, and I smiled. Later that night, my phone buzzed with a voicemail from an unknown number. It was Michael. Mom, if you're hearing this, I don't know where you are, but I need to talk to you. Please, call me back. I didn't. Some things don't need an answer. They say silence is weakness. They say if you do not shout, no one will listen. But silence taught me something. It taught me how to watch, how to wait, how to sign papers with a steady hand, even as my heart cracked. They thought I was frail because I did not fight back. They mistook stillness for surrender. But I was not surrendering. I was gathering. Memories, proof, strength. They tried to erase me with their cruelty, starve me of kindness, drown me in humiliation. But what they failed to understand is that a mother does not disappear just because her children look away. I do not need their gratitude. I do not need anyone to call me brave. I only need one thing: to restore what they tried to take. My name, my dignity, my voice. I walk through cities now where no one knows my story, and that is freedom. I drink coffee in little cafes and laugh with strangers who call me ma'am with respect. I take photos of statues, sunsets, stray dogs sleeping in alleys. I belong to no one, and I have never belonged to myself more. To the women who feel forgotten, I see you. To the mothers locked in silence, I hear you. And to my son, if he is still listening. You were not cut off for your words, you were cut off for your actions. Because blood may bind us, but it does not entitle you to cruelty. I was your home before you knew what a house was, and now I am mine. I do not walk away in defeat, I walk away standing. Underscore. If this story moved you, if you saw a piece of yourself or someone you love in these quiet battles and long overdue victories, then I invite you to stay a while. Subscribe to Grandma True Stories, where silence finds a voice, and forgotten women are remembered not with pity, but with power. Because revenge has no expiration date, and when a grandmother speaks, the world listens.